Attempts to start Muslim-Christian warfare backfire on Zionists. The recent massacre of Sri Lankan Christians plus attacks on churches and mosques have turned into a fatal mistake for the Zionists, multiple sources confirmed. In reaction, the U.S. Department of Defense is handling background checks to root out Israeli dual citizen agents, Assad and Sayanium. Hebrew for helpers, Pentagon sources say. Arab and Iranian TV broadcasts throughout the Muslim world have quoted this writer and others as saying ISIS stands for Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. Almost all Arabs think ISIS is created by Israel and regional governments. One prominent Arabian TV personality confirmed, this means that when ISIS claimed responsibility for various recent attacks, the satanic Israeli regime of Benjamin Netanyahu committed international suicide and lost all regional support, especially among Jews, as opposed to Satanists pretending to be Jews. The NYT International Edition and German Das Tank is another dog whistle to Europe, Asia, and the rest of the world after Sri Lanka, that's Zionism, terrorism. The Pentagon sources explain. The sources added, Trump is not so blind. An anti-Trump outrage is just kabuki theater as the military intelligence community, patriots, and Europe post Notre Dame have had with Israel. Anti-Zionism is now mainstream as Ilhan Omar, the Democrats, and the New York Times normalized the conversation, the sources say. As a part of the attack on Zionists, the Department of Justice may prosecute Chicago Jewish billionaire and Illinois Governor J.B. Brisker for tax fraud, the sources add. Also, the Mueller report is going to be followed with an anti-Zionist blitzkrieg, including the Department of Justice Inspector General's report and FISA declassification. The sources say, Trump is apparently saving Israel for last, they add. Speaking of Israel, a U.S. military official involved in negotiations over the Golan Heights say the Israeli army is fed up with Bibi, Benjamin Netanyahu, and unable to hold Golan anyway. The U.S. military is negotiating with the lawyer of the Arab League over the details of the return of the Golan to Syria, he says. Israel, Zionism, central banking, and North Korea were also important topics of discussion between representatives of Asian secret societies and the White Dragon Society, WDS, that took place last week. The Asian Secret Society representative said that a limited war was going to take place soon in order to unify the Korean peninsula. This source also independently confirmed that North Korean strongman Kim Jong-un had brought a US F-35 fighter with him as a gift when he met with Russian President Vladimir Putin last week. Russia responded by agreeing to support North Korea in its move to reunify the peninsula, the source said. The WDS, for its part, said such a war would need to take place in tandem with a surrender ultimatum to Israel in order to ensure that the situation did not escalate unintentionally into a World War III. The Asian Society source also noted that Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and his ruling party would be replaced with a coalition of opposition parties over the coming year or so as the new emperor took over. However, the WDS pointed out that the opposition, just like the ruling party, was full of low IQ nepotistic hacks who would not be able to deal with Japan's fundamental problems like a shrinking population and plunging living standards. The WDS said the Bank of Japan would have to be nationalized and its financial system would have to be recessed. Otherwise, special forces would step in and remove the entire corrupt Japanese body politic. The Asian Society source agreed that this would have to take place after hearing how Singapore's incredible success would due in large part to the fact that it does not have a central bank. In his book, From Third World to First, Singapore's founding father, Lee Kuan Yew, explains why he determined that Singapore should not have a central bank that could issue money and create currency. It was because we were determined not to allow our currency to lose its value. Instead, Singapore used a currency board which only issued Singapore dollars when backed by its equivalent valued in foreign exchange based on a basket. Page 72. In other words, Singapore has a currency backed by money earned from selling real stuff to the real world. Not spending more than we collect in revenue has been a guiding principle. He explains later, page 232. In the same book, Lee quotes former finance minister Lim Kim San as saying, "A central bank is an easy way out for finance minister who wants to juggle his figures when he has a deficit in his budget." What's interesting is that as Singapore separated from Malaysia, Malaysian Finance Minister Tan Siew Sin said, "If the central bank system is an inferior system, then it is clear that it is a mistake made by every industrialized country of the Western world." Page 231. Sin sinned and went ahead and created the Malaysian Central Bank, which is now engulfed in a giant corruption scandal involving the usual suspects like Goldman Sachs and the Rothschilds. Since independence in 1965, the reality-based Singapore dollar has risen 300% against the Malaysian ringgit. Also, having started at an equal level, Singapore's per capita GDP is now $58,000 million compared to Malaysia's $9,900. The US dollar, for its part, has lost 84% of its value since it was taken off the gold standard in 1971. The real living standard for 90% of Americans also plunged dramatically since then. The widespread appeal of the following Ben Garrison cartoon also shows that the world, like Singapore did long ago, is now waking up to the Zionist central bank Babylonian debt slavery scam. Former mainstream economists and pundits such as David Stockman, director of the Office of Management and Budget under President Ronald Reagan, are finally figuring things out. Stockman notes how central banks, including China's, created $15 trillion from thin air since the Lehman crisis of 2008. This $15 trillion sum is the money that was created using fake gold-backed bonds forged by Wilfredo Sauron. That money has now run out and new attempts at Zionist forgery are being systematically quashed. Instead, a global financial reset is being prepared according to sources involved in the planning. However, a senior MI6 official in charge of establishing the quantum financial system says the new system will not just be suddenly announced. The reset doesn't work like that, it is a change project. So, the current system runs in tactical while the new system is developed in strategic. They both then conjoin. It's a bit like building a new motorway alongside an older road, really, he says. The algorithm for deployment also includes the off-ledger assets and the debt reset piece, he explains. The resulting currency will be a hybrid of existing currencies, he says. This probably explains why world currencies have been moving within a narrow band relative to each other recently. The West, especially the US, had better hurry up with the reset, and it had better be good, because the rest of the world is moving on regardless. The Asian Secret Society source says Asia has been blowing ahead and building its alternatives to Western-dominated institutions like the UN, the IMF, the World Bank, etc. He noted that a massive construction project was underway in Laos to create the new Asian Standard UN there. China's $1 trillion Belt and Road Initiative (BRI) is also gathering so much momentum that soon only the US will be the only country that isn't part of it. Russia's Putin, speaking at last week's BRI summit, explained that the US was being isolated by its growing protectionism, with illegitimate unilateral restrictions imposed bypassing the UN Security Council, or, even worse, trade wars. By contrast, Putin noted the Great Eurasian Partnership and the Belt and Road concepts are both rooted in the principles and values that everyone understands. The natural aspiration of nations to live in peace and harmony, benefit from free access to latest scientific achievements and innovative development, while preserving their culture and unique spiritual identity. At its meeting last week with the Asian Secret Society, the WDS suggested bankrupting the corrupt and now deeply divided Zionist Washington, D.C. political establishment. Instead, the ancients could work with the British Commonwealth and the Western military intelligence community to create a future planning agency to work in harmony with the BRI. The Asian representatives supported this proposal. An actual and concrete method to make this happen was also proposed. But for reasons of operational security, we cannot disclose this to our readers yet. To close, we note that the Jewish new president of the Ukraine celebrated his victory with a satanic hand sign. We can guess that many of the Satanists are preparing to return to their Khazarian homeland in the Ukraine. The Jews, for their part, are about to liberate Israel and free themselves from millennia of Babylonian slavery.